Well, we will go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Bentley Rare Book Museum's virtual Coffee with a Curator program. My name is Joellen Williams, and I am the curator of rare books. I am so happy to see you all. This program is a place where bibliophiles can gather to discuss topics related to rare books and book collecting while enjoying a hot beverage or your lunch now that we've moved the time to noon. It's so good to see so many faces who are returning or people I haven't seen throughout the summer, or thank you all so much for joining. Yay. If this is your first time attending, I just want to extend an extra special welcome, but a lot of you are my frequent attendees, so thank you for returning this semester. We are in for a treat today. Today's program will highlight the importance of personal libraries and what libraries tell us about the people who own them. We're going to discuss kind of the effects that books have on readers and the effects that readers have on their books. It's a two-way street. So we will go ahead and get started. If you've been attending the programs, you know that we begin with our Where's Andrew segment. Andrew, can you raise your hand a little bit? Okay, there's Andrew, who has placed himself virtually in an unknown bookish place. And we have to guess, where is Andrew? What bookish place is he in? Sometimes he gives us clues, sometimes not. Andrew, is there a clue today? Oh, we can't hear you.
I'm muted, yeah.
Okay.
Today's is a personal library. Outside of that, I might be giving away too much.
Okay.
I know that this gives a lot of options, but
yes, that's okay though. We can do it.
we move out of the way a bit.
Okay. Personal library. So let's just start. Is it in England?
It is not in England.
Is it in Europe?
Yes.
Okay. France?
No.
I feel like I'm just going to be guessing countries.
England was close.
Oh.
Is it in Scotland?
It is Scottish, yes.
Oh, great job.
In Edinburgh? In Edinburgh?
Not in Edinburgh, no.
Okay.
Is it a royal library?
It's not.
Okay, so it's just Scotland.
I'm a very famous Scotsman.
Uh-oh.
So I have Google imaged it as I usually do, and I think I found it. But I'll wait till last. I'll let everybody else guess.
Is it Robert Burns?
Not Robert Burns or Robert Louis Stevenson in the chat.
No.
I will say the Where's Andrew might also help.
Andrew.
Okay, so there's okay. Who are Scottish Andrews?
In St. Andrews.
No.
Okay. And I feel like we're going to know it once you say it.
It's not my library, definitely not.
Is it St. Andrew's Library?
It is not, no.
Can I guess?
Yes, Maggie. I think we can officially have you guess now.
Well, I'm trying to figure out it's the private library of industrialist Andrew Carnegie.
Oh.
Yes.
And it is in Skibo Castle.
Yes, it's very exciting. I have a handout about it, like usual, which I've placed in the chat.
Oh no,
it is sort of middle of nowhere in Scotland.
Wow.
It's now a private country club, but they kept the library intact, and most of them are actually Carnegie's books.
Huh.
That was a really good one. I guess I just didn't expect it to be there.
He was born in Scotland, so it makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think I had connected that he was born in Scotland. Wow.
Yeah.
Can I just say I'm coveting that death trap desk back there on that back wall?
Yeah.
Oh,
This
wow.
this one,
The partner's desk. They call it a death trap desk because it was in the movie. When you have two people that can work at the same desk on either side, partner's desk. But yeah, that's gorgeous.
That is, and Andrew already said it, but I'll reiterate, as always, he creates a handout for us with information about this personal library or wherever he is. So he put that in the chat. Thank you so much, Andrew. I'm not gonna lie, that was a very good one. You always have good ones, but
The way I found it through images is because the beautiful ceiling.
interesting. Okay, that's really good. I was wondering kind of what you did to be able to find it. That's really cool.
I typed in personal library, and that was probably the 10th or 12th picture that popped up. And then I clicked on it, and
You cheat.
went a little. Every time nobody can guess what it is, I Google image search. I'm not cheating. I'm just
Helping. You're helping.
yes, I'm helping.
Yes, Maggie is our backup plan.
Moving us.
That's so funny. Well, thank you, Andrew. That was really good. We learned something new today. I love it. So now we're going to dive into the discussion of today's program. And I'm going to begin our group discussion, which I hope will be a group discussion, with a couple notes from a book that I really love. I think I've mentioned it in this session before. I'm not sure you're going to be able to see the title, but it generally, yeah, I guess you can see it. Looks like this. It's called The Secret Life of Books, and it's by Tom Mole. If you've ever received an email from me, which I think pretty much everyone has, I have a little line in my email signature from this book. I just really like it. And there's a specific chapter 3. It's called Books/Self. And this chapter explores how books shape our identities and how they convey these identities to others. So I had a couple quotes that I really wanted to share and ask you all what you guys thought about this. So I really like the beginning of chapter 3. And Tom, the author, writes, "If you invite me into your house, sooner or later, I'll sidle over to the bookshelf and, head cocked to one side, examine the books. You can tell a lot about people by the books they put on their shelves." And then a few pages later, there's another quote that says, "Your books reveal who you are." So I would like feedback from the group. I thought we could have a little introductory discussion to this session. Considering the quotes I just read, I would love for you all to think about the bookshelves that you might have at home, or perhaps the book piles that you might have at home, in your dorm room, at work. Are these books revelatory of who you are? Are they indicative of one or more aspects of your identity? And if you'd like to share, I'd love to hear from different people.
I can start off and share since you can see them, but this shelf, the second shelf here, are all Frankensteins.
Oh, yeah. She
I
likes it.
started I got really interested into Gothic novels and Gothic horror, and for some reason it just became a Frankenstein collection because I already had a few, and it has grown and grown. And I even have started collecting non-book Frankenstein stuff to go with it. You can't really see it, but right here at the very end, I have a little candy dish shaped like Frankenstein. Over here, this is actually a pocketbook shaped like a book that has a Frankenstein cover on it, but I pretend like it's a book and it's up here on the shelf. And yeah, so that's it for now. I have a huge stack of books right here on my desk that I guess you can kind of see the edge of right here.
Mm-hmm.
that I don't have room for on my bookshelf, but I guess that's a common problem.
Chairs make good places for books. Stacks on chairs.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Maggie. Who else would like to share?
Hi, this is Ellen. I'd love to share. We're doing a house project now, and I've just had to kind of clear my shelf and go through it. So this is great that you're asking this question today, Joy. But I noticed my bookshelf is kind of indicative of seasons of my life. I had a lot of self-help books that I had years ago, and I think when I was trying to figure a lot out in my own life. And then I've got a lot of children's books that I had, of course, when my children were little, and I have here for my granddaughter. And then I also noticed that I have a lot of novels because I think that's where I am now. I'm just really reading novels for enjoyment. So I kind of stepped through seasons of my life as I looked at my bookshelf, and I thought that was kind of neat.
That is wonderful. Thank you so much. I think that makes sense that it would be seasons of your life. Kathy, I saw you unmute. Did you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, obviously, I have been interested in mysteries since I was young. And Nancy Drew, of course, we all could relate, but it just kept going. And I guess that's why I have a lot of mysteries. I read a lot of fiction mysteries. And I'm reading Baldacci right now, all of his Camel Club series. But then I also lean towards antique or old books. And then I have a lot of those and poetry. And then I also like quotes. So anytime I can find a Bartlett's quote book at Goodwill or something like that, I just love the idea of quotes, whether they come from a book. Sometimes in a book that I'm reading, I will find a quote that I like that I will write down and save because it applies to something else in your life or what's happening in your life or leading you to something else that you didn't think about. I also have lots of children's books, and my children's books are mostly patriotic books. Very interested in the flag, our country. And then I have a lot of books like Ellen does that I have saved for my grandchildren that were my children's books.
That's wonderful.
So I'm the Nancy Drew. If you want to find somebody, I can find them.
That is so good to know. That's going to come in handy. I was a Nancy Drew reader too. Love it. Who else wants to share?
My library is mostly nonfiction, and I have a lot of vintage books. To me, I found the other day a photo of what all my shelves looked like about a year ago, and seeing how messy I thought they were then and how clean they look in comparison now really paused me to think for a minute. Very much kind of in a mess at the moment.
Yeah, that's okay though. That's great. Anyone else?
Thought you wanted to say something.
No, that was a comment.
Okay. Well, if you think of something, feel free to put it in the chat. I was able to really get some good insight into myself by looking at my bookshelves at home. So that was really fun. For those of you who don't know, I think most of you know already, but like my book collecting self is I collect books printed by and about the Amish. It's just my thing. So that's like my book collecting self. I also collect a lot of cookbooks, but I feel like that's my future self. I like to cook, but just with working and having a young child, I just don't always get to do as many fun recipes as I want. So I'm like, that's my future self. So I'm saving that for her when I can do fun things. I have a lot of African American literature and history, kind of understanding my Blackness and my Black self. I have a lot of Christian books and self-help books as like my spiritual self. I've got a lot of historical fiction. That's my escaping self when I want to escape reality. And then I have a lot of professional and scholarly books for my job self, my professional self. And so I had some fun looking through that and getting to know myself better through my own bookshelves. So that was good. The last question I want to ask before we get into the next section is I'd like us to kind of consider the idea of books in the Western world, and kind of how the idea of owning books has changed. Before
Should be music.
before the development of the printing press, the development of the printing press in Europe, I would say in the 15th century, most people didn't have books because if you wanted to have one, they had to be handwritten, hand copied. It really wasn't until, even after the printing press began, books were still a, expensive commodity. It wasn't really until the Industrial Revolution and then deeper into the 19th century that books became more affordable to more people. So books went from becoming, a status symbol to being more readily available. But I want to talk about today and, print books, because nowadays you can have books on Kindle, you can have audiobooks. But today, what does owning a lot of print books mean? It used to be like a status thing, but is it still that? Or what is it? What do you know about someone just by the fact that they own a lot of print books?
They like to hold the book.
Agreed. They like to actually hold the book because today you don't have to if you don't want to.
I kind of still see it as a status symbol. Boy, aren't I smart? I have all these books.
I think that's a good point. I think we all got used to like seeing on CNN when they all had to be at home or whatever during the pandemic. Everyone was in front of a bookshelf. And I was like, that's so interesting that was like the expected, the accepted, I am a person you should listen to because I am standing and sitting in front of books.
And I would get out of my chair and walk up closer to the TV so that I could read the spines on the books.
Yes,
I would pause the TV so I could see what they were reading. And then a lot of times you would find they wrote some of the books.
Yes.
Wow, that's really cool. That's a whole other dimension of this. Really interesting. So I kind of just wanted to pose that as we think about personal libraries. And so anyways, fascinating stuff. But we'll get into our next section. I'm very, very excited because this has been a great discussion to help frame what we're about to do. So we've been talking more broadly about personal libraries, but now we're going to narrow our focus to highlight one woman's amazing personal library. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Miss Robin Revna, and she is the daughter of Miss Doris Eleanor Preston Ramsay. And Miss Ramsay passed away in April of this year. Is that correct, Robin?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Leaving her relatives with an extremely large collection of books, including antiquarian ones. And then sometime later, Robin contacted me about accepting some of these books for the Bentley Rare Book Museum. And today, the Bentley Rare Book Museum proudly possesses 257 of Miss Ramsay's books, and we are so in love with them. But I think it's interesting for us to talk about how did this collection come to be? How did this personal library form? And then how did it end up here? I told you like the logistics of it, but there's a lot that goes into the thought of bringing a collection, from taking a collection out of its home and putting it into an institution where it can have a second life. So we're going to talk about that as well. And so I'm very excited. I'm going to conduct a live interview with Robin so that we can all hear the story behind the books. Okay, so I have questions I'm going to ask Robin. But if you have questions that pop up, feel free to add those into the chat so that we can talk about those too. So I will go ahead and get started with the interview. So welcome, Robin. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Of course. So let's begin by learning about your mother. What are some adjectives that you would use to describe her?
I think one is she's witty and she loved puns. So if you don't mind, I'll tell you a joke she liked. It was, what are the consequences of reading J.R.R. Tolkien? Anybody have a guess? It's hobbit forming.
Oh my God.
So that would be an example of joke that she just loved. Wordplay. Let's see. She was generous and I guess insightful, intelligent.
Wonderful. Oh, she sounds amazing. So growing up, what did you observe about your mother's relationship with books? When did you first notice that she really valued books?
I guess we always knew because our house was full of bookcases and the bookshelves were full. We had all the National Geographics going back from the very first one because she had gotten those from her father and continued it. So we just had books everywhere, and she would take us to the library. If we needed to do a research paper, back then there wasn't Google, we would just pull out the encyclopedia or whatever different books she had in her collection and use it to write a report for school. So
that's really interesting. So kind of a follow-up to that, what circumstances in her life do you think contributed to her affinity for books? Are you all just one big like book-loving family, or did she?
I mean, we are, but I think she was an only child. I think she might have been a little bit lonely because she had 4 children. She's like, I will not have an only child. I want to have more. But I think her books were kind of her companion or always with her. And I think that's where it started because she kept all her children's books. Those were part of some of the things I had sent to you. But she kept, I mean, pretty much from the beginning, she loved her books, even as a child, I think.
Wow, that makes sense. So you kind of started to answer this, the types of books your mother kept and stewarded. So it was children's books. What else?
She had all the Harvard classics. So she always liked the classics. We had bookshelves full of that series, or I don't know how many are in the series. Like I said, she had National Geographic, Smithsonian, Horizon. And then she had, as a girl, like Nancy Drew, any of those adventure girl books. She had lots of different types of those. I remember reading those too, because I thought it was really cool because Nancy Drew had a roadster and wear frocks, and she wasn't like, wearing jeans and like I was, So
awesome. So with these books, so I think you mentioned the National Geographic she got from her father. But in general, how did she acquire the books in her collection? Were most of them passed down from family members, or were they also purchases?
Some, I think both, because some, when we were going through her estate, I did find some books, like they were from her grandmother. They were inscribed, and maybe so I did find that from other family members. But then she would just buy books as she read them as well. Wonderful. But being an only child, I think she got all the books from her parents and grandparents, and so she kept them.
So she got them. That makes sense because she was the one that would have been the heir to get them. So was she a person, do you think, who collected books literally for the joy of collecting, like having them, or was she like a reader? Was she one that was definitely like, I like to read, hence I'm going to have a lot of books, or maybe some of both?
I think some of both, because she was a huge reader. She was actually an accomplished knitter, and she could actually read while she was knitting. I don't know how she did that, but anyway. So she would multitask. She would read while she was doing something else. But but so she was a huge, huge reader. I think that really kept her going, like during COVID, to go off task a little bit. But I would keep sending her books during COVID because she was in lockdown and she didn't have any visitors, and books kept her going. She always said if it weren't for the books, she wouldn't have made it. So a reader, but also I think when she had books, she loved them. It didn't matter if it was paperback, hardback, old, used, whatever. She liked the book and she kept it.
That is super. That's really interesting. I kind of figured it would be somewhat of both, but I wanted to just ask. Um, okay, so um, was your mother partial to certain books in her collection? And if so, which ones or which genre?
I know she always really liked her. She had the first children's Encyclopedia Britannica, and she
Mhm.
always and had a set of companion books. I can't remember the name, like Maggie from Scotland or names like that about children from different. And that was from 1934, I think. Anyhow, that I know she really liked that. And she remembered those books so fondly, like reading the companion books. And I think she liked all her girl adventure books like Nancy Drew and um, but she kind of just liked all her, I don't know, she liked classics. She just liked her books. She's like, a collector one time came and saw her books and wanted to buy some, and she would not sell her books. I mean, doesn't matter if you have 4,000 or 5,000 books, they can't have even one. You could borrow it to read it if you give it back, but you couldn't buy it.
Wow.
So
I would like to include, get another perspective as we're doing this interview. Addie McDowell, Addie, can you raise your hand so people know who you are? There's Addie. Addie is our student assistant here in the Department of Museums, Archives, and Rare Books. And Addie's duties are legion. She has quite a few duties, but one of her duties is to inventory very large collections, do a basic inventory like the Doris, Preston, Ramsay book collection. So Addie, I think you've touched every single book in this collection twice because you rehoused it and then did the initial inventory on it. So as Robin is talking about her mother and about the books and how her mother cared about her books, do you have anything to add? I want to make sure that your relationship with this collection is highlighted too. Are you finding that you're like things are connecting now that you're hearing from Robin?
Yeah, I can definitely see that. The books were definitely well loved, but also very well taken care of. So I can tell that she really, really loved the books that she owned, and I can tell that she was protective of them. Um, one of the things that I could also tell what her interests were kind of in the books that we received. There were a lot of women writers from the 20th century, and a bunch of different cultures represented, like the Pennsylvania Dutch, Persians, East African tribes, Scandinavians, all kinds of different ethnic groups and cultures represented in her collection. And there were so many different education-based works, which made me wonder if she was interested in the history of education or interested in what books are used, kind of leading up to our future exhibition about the books that made us, if she was interested in how books influence the way we learn as children. And I think that it makes a lot of sense to know now that she was very passionate about the collection and that she was a reader, and that those were all things that I kind of predicted while I was going through the collection.
yeah, she did have a degree. She went to Penn State and she had a degree in audiology and speech therapy. And she did teach
Mm.
elementary school for a couple years. So I don't know if
Mm,
that would tie in with the educational books.
Yes,
that could
So
make sense. Yeah.
yeah.
that makes a
The
lot.
books might have been in better condition, but she and my dad moved a lot. They moved like I want to say maybe 13, 15 times and big moves like,
Mm.
Oklahoma to New Hampshire, Mississippi. And then so some the books were moved a lot. So I think sometimes they weren't that damaged them,
Mm.
unfortunately, because otherwise they would probably been like in perfect condition. I mean,
Yeah.
she loved them. They would have been better condition, but moving is rough on them.
It is, but they're still absolutely incredible. We've had such a great time, and several of them, a lot of them still have the dust jackets. I mean, there's some that have, don't have them still, but a lot of them do. I mean, that's major, or at least a good portion of the dust jacket. But I know, Addie, I know you have to leave a little bit early, but I would like to Is there anything else you'd like to add while you and Robin are both online? I want to make sure that you get a chance to add anything else.
No, I think that's all I had to say. I would have loved to meet this woman. I guess that's my main when I was going through her collection, I saw a lot of connections with my own personal collection and her collection. So I think the big thing I want to add here is that she seemed like an excellent, excellent woman, and I would have absolutely loved to meet her and sit down with her and talk about her collection more.
I love it.
Thank you for working with the books. Appreciate it.
Yay. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Addie, for chiming in. Want to highlight that invisible labor of inventory. Very, very important in special collections. So Maggie does a lot of that as well. So I want to just make sure people know how important that is. But it's also wonderful because you feel like you get to know someone when you've touched everything that, every part of their archival collection or their book collection. It's like you feel like you've made a new friend. So last few questions for Robin, since we're talking about your mother's collection now that it is here. How did you make the choice to donate? I know sometimes family members may have wanted some books, but how did you make the choice to donate a large portion of it to the Bentley Rare Book Museum here at Kennesaw?
Well, my one son just graduated from Kennesaw in May, and I have another son going to Kennesaw, so we have 2 owls in the family. And so I would go on campus sometimes, or when visitors come and I found out about the Rare Book Museum, I visited it and just loved it. And also I would go to Zuckerman or the Holocaust Museum or, different places. I always take visitors. It just seems like a gem, like a little gem. And I thought, oh, maybe my mom's books can be taken care of, because if they're just sitting in somebody's garage, they're going to, be damaged. And I didn't want that to happen, even though many of them are other family members have them, and that's fine. But I thought she wanted me to take care of the books. So I thought this would be a nice way. And she could be remembered. It has her name on the collection because she was a stay-at-home mom, and she thought, no one to remember her. So I wanted to.
Oh, that is beautiful. Well, so many people are going to remember her because her name is all over the collection. It's going to be in the catalog record. How beautiful. And last question, and I want to be sensitive. I know I'm asking a lot of questions about your mother, which can be difficult, but we just are so grateful for this collection. Last question, how do you envision your mother's book collection being used in the future? What do you think her dream and your dream would be? Because I want to make sure we're able to fulfill that dream.
Just if they can be used like for other people, like for education or somehow a picture back in time, because I think she and I do too. Like education's the answer to so many things in the world, and the books, if books can help in some way, that would be wonderful. And I was going to say, I told Lori earlier, I don't know if you ever heard, but her back to her books, that looks very similar to what my mom had an entire wall and more than one wall. But that's very reminiscent of that. That looks wonderful. But I grew up with that, so.
I love it. And it's already, as you can see, having an effect on, we're still we got everything, rehoused and inventoried, and now it's going to be ready to use for teaching. But it was interesting because when I got the collection, it was, the end of the spring semester, and Addie was not going to be here for the summer. And she said, after she rehoused it, she was like, can you please save this for me? Don't inventory it. I want to do it. And I was like, okay. Normally I'm like, I'll start on it. But she pleaded with me that she wanted to do the inventory, the full one. And so she was just, when she was going through it, she's like, I gotta be the one to inventory this. So exciting. We are so excited to use it. So by now, most of the group is probably wondering, well, what kind of books are in this collection? I'm super excited. I have some pictures and some interesting things I would like to highlight from the collection. Before I do that, I did want to open it up. Does anyone have any final questions for Robin about about her mom's collection or anything they've heard from her?
Hi, Joellen, and hi, Robin.
Hi.
Joy Ellen said that there were about 250 books that were donated. That's out of how many, and how did you choose which ones to donate?
Great question.
I donated any that I could. Other family members didn't want. I took everything I could. So I wasn't really picking and choosing. I just sent Joy Ellen some pictures and was like, "Are you interested?" And she said yes. But yeah, I think my mom at the time of her death was living in a one bedroom apartment, and I'm guesstimating she actually had 3,000 to 4,000 books. So later periods of her life, she would have had a lot more, and those have been disseminated to other family members. I wanted all of them to go to KSU, but obviously other people want to have them too. So that's fine. They want their own home library. So that's fine.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
That's a great question, Bill. Thank you so much for asking that. Any other questions? Yeah, Kathy.
I just wanted to tell Robin, I also have my encyclopedias that my mother bought when I was born. And they were 1954. It was the Book of Knowledge. And they have the wonderful covers like they used to have. So I treasure my encyclopedias.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. My mom did too.
I love it. Anyone else? All right. Well, let's take and again, there's a lot of books to choose from. These are just my picks of things that I just was like, I gotta show the group this. So I am going to share my screen. Let's see if I can. This always gives me problems, but that's okay. Oh, here it is. Okay, great. Okay, so right now you should be seeing kind of a blank screen that says children's literature, juvenile book series. Yeah. Okay, so anyway, I kind of broke things into categories, things that I found interesting. So we talked about the fact that that Miss Ramsay collected a lot of children's literature, that she valued that, which is marvelous. I found some stuff that I just thought was super cool. So I know we talked about Nancy Drew, but then there were also other girl series like the Outdoor Girls, in addition to being plenty of Nancy Drews. So we have things like this here. This copy here was probably printed, I believe. It didn't have like an exact date of the printing, but it had just a copyright date. But I think this one was probably printed in the 1930s or 1940s. And I absolutely love this because at the in the back of the book, it has, I just love it. At the bottom, it says, "Don't throw away the wrapper. Use it as a handy catalog of the books you want someday to have. But in case you do mislay it, write to the publishers for a complete catalog." And I just think it's interesting because a lot of book collectors talk about the importance of the dust jacket or the dust wrapper. But it's actually interesting to see that note printed in the back of a book. Part of me, and sorry for the beeping, it's just my computer if y'all can hear that. But part of me, this book was originally printed, or it was originally published in 1913. And like I said, I think that this copy is from the 1930s or 1940s. Part of me kind of wonders what would happen if I emailed Grosset and Dunlap, now owned by Penguin Random House, and requested a dust jacket for this book that was published in 1913. I don't know if they could make good on this promise to send another dust jacket, but I just thought that was fabulous, and I can't wait to use that for teaching. But anyway, just thought that was super cool, and had to highlight the Britannica Juniors, the Encyclopedia Britannica Juniors. I love this because a lot of rare book institutions, we often don't accept encyclopedias because they're common and they're usually not rare. And we can get that information exists elsewhere. However, that does not apply to every set of encyclopedias. For example, this is a standout item. This is the Encyclopedia Britannica Junior from 1934. And Miss Ramsay had all 10, it has 10 volumes, and she had all 10 volumes. This was the first time that Encyclopedia Britannica was produced specifically for children. And excuse me, I think I said that there were 10 volumes, but there are 12 volumes. Sorry. There's 12 volumes, and all 12 are there. And then also there are companion fiction books that accompany the encyclopedia volume. So she had it all. And this is really special that we have the first time that we have copies of the volumes that were first published for children in the 1930s. That is just so cool. Next, I noticed there was some incredible fiction and particularly romance books. By the way, romance books are experiencing kind of a revival in interest. Romance books have often been kind of, aside from like your Jane Austens maybe, or Frances Burney that kind of started the courtship novel, a lot of romance books have not been viewed at the same level as, collectible classic books or things like that. But nowadays, people are realizing the importance that romance books have and how collectible they can be. So this is a book that called, I don't even know how to say it correctly, Laverons, maybe? I don't know. But it's by Clara Louise Burnham. And it's written in 1925. This is the first edition. So love that. It was published in 1925 by Houghton Mifflin. I will say, I started reading this book, and I don't usually like to read our copies of the books because our copies are, rarer copies. But I've been trying, I need to find this book. I was like, okay, I have got to stop reading this book and actually do my job. And it's a really good book. I don't think I had luck finding a copy on A-Books, but I think I'm sure I can find one. I just couldn't find one quickly that I wanted. So I'm hoping I can find a copy. It's a really good book. But the reason why I freaked out when I first saw this book is because I was like, oh, this is the book. So I don't know if you all know, but we have the library of the writer Cora Harris. She was a writer in the early 20th century in Georgia. And we have her library. And in the library, in that library and in her archival collection as well, there are movie posters. And I found this movie poster that I loved. And it was for a film. And the film was based on the Laverons by Clara Louise Burnham. This is that movie poster. The movie posters for the movie, I know, Forbidden Lips. And I was like, and I remember that I saw that because I used it in my exhibition. I was like, this is fun. So I had fun finding a connection there. So anyway, if anyone wants to ever get me a present, you can get me some copy of this book because it's super good. But anyway, I had a lot of fun finding or noticing that connection between two of our personal library collections that we have in the Bentley. So exciting. The other item that I was just fascinated by is this one called The Awakening of Helena Richie. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of this book, but it was published in 1906. And I have spent a lot of time, y'all may remember last semester, I did a coffee with a curator on Kate Chopin's The Awakening. I had to pre-record it. I couldn't, because my grandfather died when I was going to do the program. So I had to just pre-record it. We didn't get to meet to talk about it. But I spent a lot of time thinking about The Awakening. And The Awakening, Kate Chopin's The Awakening was published in 1899. And The Awakening did not have very many printings again until the 1960s. Kate Chopin's The Awakening was heavily criticized by American society, about, this woman finding her spiritual and sexual awakening. That didn't go over well. A lot of early 20th century audiences. The book was actually censored, or I should say really was banned in some libraries in the early 20th century. But even though there weren't very many printings of the awakening between 1899 and the 1960s, there was an additional printing in 1906, the same year that this book was published. And part of me is like, is this just a coincidence? Or is there something here that I could research? I don't know. I think I'm going to just I'm going to see what I can find. It may be nothing, but I just think that's, I don't know. I feel there could be something there. So I'm interested in that. This is from that same book, The Awakening of Helena Richie. I'm going to try to see if I can. Okay, here we go. So one thing that I think is super cool is that the publisher has at the very back, the publisher is A.L. Burt Company. And at the back, they have this good fiction worth reading. I think that marketing tactic is so interesting. Let me see if I can try to. Here we go. I was able to zoom in. Good fiction worth reading. It kind of it says this, a series of romances containing several of the old favorites in the field of historical fiction, replete with powerful romances of love and diplomacy that excel in thrilling and absorbing interest. I'm very fascinated by the marketing tactics that publishing companies use to kind of put judgment on reading material, telling people, oh, here's a list of books that are definitely like you should read, that you should have in your personal collection. These are books that are worth it.
Joyanne,
yeah.
Interesting. In the early days, 1920s, many publishers did this. They put what they call ads at the back of the book, promoting their other books.
Yes.
And sometimes they were removed in subsequent printing. So they become, in some instances, identifiers of first printings.
That's fascinating. Thank you, Bill, because Bill is a major collector. And so Bill is able to have that sensibility to kind of, identifying the printing or the edition. And sometimes you're right, Bill, it comes down to an advertisement or a series of advertisements that were first put in the book. That's a great point. The other thing that I noticed, there was an I don't know if I may have not gotten a picture of it, but there was an advertisement for popular reading material for the masses. And it was used phrases like world's best literature, writers of the most notable fiction. It kind of like made me think, this is during a time when books were becoming more available to people. Books were being made more cheaply. But at the same time, it shows that people had that desire to have quote unquote important literature on their bookshelves, and being able to obtain this type of literature in attractive bindings was something that people valued. All right, so now I'll go on. So I also noticed a lot of classic literature in Miss Ramsay's collection. I absolutely loved this. I kind of wanted to zoom in so you could see on the left side, you're seeing the book when it's closed. You're seeing that lovely cloth cover. And then on the right side, you're seeing the end paper. So when you open the book, this is an edition of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, a very famous collection of Persian poetry attributed to the 11th century poet Omar Khayyam. It was translated into English in the 19th century by Edward Fitzgerald, and it really became popularized in the West after that. I know there are a lot of people that really like to have a copy. It's a very popular collection of translated poems in many households, but I just thought that this one had that artistic element to it that was very beautiful, and I think probably evokes some of its origins, its Persian origins. So I thought that was really interesting too.
I used that for a report in high school. I remember
You
reading
do?
reading the poems because I did a poetry report. Sounds funny.
That's great. So
Just
you
pick
use
that one out. Yep, I remember this.
that is wonderful. So you actually use this with that. No,
I
that is
did. I did.
oh, I love it. So then I also noticed that there were some science pieces in here. And I was like, oh my goodness. So look at this. These are kind of these late 1950s, early 1960s paperbacks. And they kind of remind me of, like science fiction covers. But I was thinking, I wasn't familiar with the writer. And I was like, okay, are these science fiction? Are they nonfiction? I wasn't sure. Um, but again, I don't know how to say his name. Burton Ruchet? I don't know. If anyone knows, and if I'm saying it wrong, please correct me. Um, but he was a medical writer for the New Yorker magazine for nearly 50 years. I did some research and I found that. He researched and wrote about real life medical mysteries. He also wrote novels, but again, he wrote a lot of just like medical mysteries that were like real medical mysteries that were taking place or that had happened. So he's actually most famous for the 1980 book, The Medical Detectives. Cool thing. So I learned The Medical Detectives, that book he published in 1980, inspired the 2004 show on Fox called House. Anyone ever
Oh
watched
my
House?
God.
I know. Isn't that cool? I think that's so interesting. So we have this man to thank for all those times we were, like munching on popcorn on the edge of our chair at home watching House. So I thought that was super cool.
So
I'm
my
going to throw in another little tidbit. The fellow that actually created the show, David Shore,
Mhm.
was a first cousin of mine's best friend growing up in Toronto, Ontario.
Stop. That's
Yeah.
awesome. That is so cool. Another connection.
And I
Um,
wanted to add that my dad, my mom's husband was a
yeah.
medical doctor. So I bet these will be his books, but all the books are on the bookcase. So
Oh,
to solve the
Nice.
mystery there, he would have been interested in that because he's a doctor.
wow. Okay. Well, that's super cool. Okay. So that's an added dimension I didn't even know about. That makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah. Because there were a couple of these. I was like, oh, this is different than what I was normally finding, but this is super
That
cool.
would be if you found science books. He was a chemistry major, and then he went on to
Oh,
med school. So science books would most likely be from, and these definitely were be my dad's. But
wow. Okay. Well,
he passed
well,
away like 23 years ago. So I,
oh, okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is great though, because I really hadn't seen these kind of books before, or I wasn't familiar with this author, but I learned so much. I went down a wonderful rabbit hole researching this. So I'm very grateful to your
Mm.
dad. That's wonderful. Um, so next thing is this my last category? Oh yes, I decided to end on this category. Y'all, I was like, oh my goodness. I can't believe I'm because me being a collector of books printed by and about the Amish, and I've expanded my collection to include more Pennsylvania Dutch. I was like, this is great. So there was some wonderful materials on Pennsylvania Dutch culture, and I am really interested in these mid-century explorations of Pennsylvania Dutch culture because I just purchased a very similar book from my collection called Blue Hills and Shoe Fly Pie by Anne Hark, and it was published in 1952. This book is called The Pennsylvania Dutch. It was also published in 1952, and now I'm like, wait a minute, were there a lot of people exploring Pennsylvania Dutch culture in the 1950s? I don't know. So now I am curious about that. So I am interested in that very much. And then this is the one that takes the cake for me. Rosanna of the
Wow.
Amish. At this point, I was like, okay, I am proud of myself because I left this book where it should be. It was donated to the Rare Book Museum, not to me. It was like I wanted to take this one home. But I'm going to get my own copy because this is major. I did some research. So Joseph Yoder was a Mennonite and he wrote Rosanna of the Amish as somewhat of a biography of his mother. And this, I need to get a copy of this for my collection because it would link together some things that I'm working on with my collection. But this was published in 1941. This is a first edition, has the dust jacket. So I am very excited. This inspired me to my personal collection. So I am very happy about that. I was so impressed. But those are the books that I just wanted to highlight. There are so many more, so many more texts. And I am, this is something that I'm going to be used for teaching, for exhibition. So if you want to make an appointment to see any of these books or more, you want a listing of them, I'm happy to provide that. If you're a professor and you see something that you want to be incorporated into your class, just let me know, but we can talk more about that. We're very, very excited. Wanted to ask if anyone had any final questions or comments or anything.
I just wanted to comment. My mom was born in Lansford, Pennsylvania, and my father was born from outside Philadelphia. So they grew up in that area. So she has a lot of books. I actually have some too that have also some that have, like, I studied German. So she has a lot of books of the Pennsylvania Dutch and the German. And I have some of those too. But so that would be why she would have an interest in that. Would there be a regional interest, I guess.
There's always a story behind the books, and
right, exactly.
I love it. I love how you're adding in, just explaining for us, because we never got to meet your mom, so you have that experience. I love it, and that makes total sense. Well, this has been wonderful, and if we could just give Robin either a round of applause or a digital round of applause. Thank you, Robin.
No, my pleasure.
Yeah, because I know it's difficult. We're asking you all these questions about your mom, and I know you miss her. And so I'm
thankful for you taking the books and taking care of them and all that's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, we're delighted to do it. It's our honor. So thank you so much. For everybody, I did want you all to know, we have, as you can see, we have a new time, a 12 o'clock p.m. time, which I think is actually kind of fun to do. I actually really like that. So the frequency of our programming, it may not be every month anymore, because I'm going to have some more in-person programs that are going to be happening. So particularly for our students, if next month we're going to have a Constitution Week program. It's going to be along with the KSU Library. We are so excited about that. And then for October, I'm going to have an in-person program. It's my exhibition opening for the books that taught us. It's an entire exhibition about the history of instructional books, textbooks. So I really hope you all can come to that. It's going to be in person. And then we'll have our next virtual program in November. I know that we love our virtual program, but I just want to make sure I'm able to do some more in-person things too. So I kind of have to switch it up a little bit. But I'll make sure everyone stays updated. And yes, Patricia, yay, Constitution Week. We're doing it big. We're doing some really, really cool stuff. I'm excited. It's going to be awesome. But as always, thank you all so much for joining. It's a pleasure. And thank you, Robin, again. And I look forward. I will send emails about everything that's going on. So don't worry. You'll be hearing from me. So thank you all so much. I appreciate it. See you next time.